Hey, thanks for being here for Visibility Vixen, episode 6.
I love storytelling. What are the stories I'm telling myself, and what are the stories I'm telling other people about myself?
Welcome to the Visibility Vixen podcast, where we create space to grow our brand with intention and clarity, one episode at a time. Join us as we explore the many aspects of entrepreneurship, start loving the journey instead of the destination, and begin building a legacy that lasts. Here's your host, Michelle Lewis.
Hello. Welcome to today's episode. I don't get to do this too frequently, but today my guest, Jenna Arak, is actually one of my closest friends. I've known her since 6th grade, and we have gone through very similar life changes together, and we actually started on the journey of ladypreneurship about 3 months apart. So we left our jobs and we started doing this all on our own, not really knowing what exactly we wanted to do, but we had the faith and we just supported each other. And the past couple of years have been incredible, just watching each other grow. So you're actually going to be talking to someone that I talk to on a weekly basis. We have coffee dates all the time, and it's so important to surround yourself with as many female entrepreneurs as you can to just feel that support and to feel encouraged and to know that someone else out there is going through a very similar experience. And there are some days that I just can't even see correctly, and I'll text Jenna or we'll go to coffee and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm struggling with and I feel all alone. And she's like, really? Because I'm going through the exact same thing. So today we're talking about storytelling. So that's, if you're writing your own book, if you're writing your own website, she specializes in coming up with the right words to tell your story, to not only reflect what you do, but who you are. So this is a great episode, and I want to apologize in advance because you're going to be hearing a little bit of background noise. I don't know what it was today, but there were gardeners, there were airplanes. It was just a very noisy day. Normally, I would freak out and be like, let's start all this over. But I find that when we get the most distractions, it's because we're really on point with what we're doing. So I'm going to leave it as it is because I think Jenna's words are so valuable. So if you don't mind bearing with me, you might hear a little bit of noise, but it'll help you to focus and pay attention to what she's saying. And this is a great interview to listen to over and over again to perfect your about page. So let's dive right in. Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today is a special day because we're going to be talking to one of my closest friends, Jenna Arak. So Jenna, welcome to today's show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited too. For those of you that don't know, I've literally known Jenna since 6th grade. And we have both, gone through our lives and been in different jobs. And around the same time, we decided to become solopreneurs. So Jenna, do you have an exciting story that sticks out to you about our crazy, frizzy-haired days of our youth?
It's funny. Before I got on this call, I was thinking about how wild it is that we have known each other since the 6th grade with our crazy curly hair and passing notes back and forth about the boys that we liked, and that we're now here. I don't even know how many years later, 15, 18 years later, both working for ourselves, and I'm on your podcast right now. Is this kind of blowing my mind a little bit, how the evolution for both of us, not just in our work and our professional lives, but in our friendship and how we've related to each other over the years. So, but to answer your question, a crazy story about our youth. I mean, my favorite one is always that we used to pass notes back and forth to each other.
Those were good notes. So let me tell you a little bit more about Jenna so you can know more about what she does. Jenna Arak is a soulful storyteller. She shows women how to use the written word to share their story, to teach, to connect, to have an impact on the people who need to read about who they are, what they've done, and what they do. Because through reading one another's stories, all of our lives will be changed for the better. Jenna's mission is to encourage women to follow their dreams, build upon on their strengths and bring new, interesting, and innovative ideas into the world through storytelling. She's also a copywriter, an editor, and a denizen of any bookstore's self-help section. Her writing has been featured on Salon, Thought Catalog, The Every Girl, The Muse, Darling Magazine, The Girl Who Knows, Career Contessa, and more. She lives and writes in Pasadena. So let's dive into storytelling. You love helping people tell their stories, but what's your story? How did you get into that? What's your background?
I love that question. So I started out actually professionally doing public relations, and that kind of evolved into digital marketing over the years. So I spent a good 7-8 years doing that after college, and got to this point a little over 2 years ago where I just wasn't happy. My work was fine. Like, I had every reason to be happy. I had a good job. I got to go to work and help people, build their social media strategy, and got to work with really cool clients. But there was just something about the work that I was doing that I wasn't connected to. Mm-hmm. And I really knew that I wanted to write. I wanted to make a living as a writer, and I really wanted to work for myself. I wanted the flexibility that came with working from home and creating my own schedule and picking the clients that I got to work with, and just really being proactive about my own professional career. So I ended up leaving my job and working for myself. And I kind of did it in this, I didn't put a lot of heart into it, I don't think, at first. I was just like, all right, well, I'm good at writing and I have a marketing background, so I should be a copywriter. Like, that's what makes the most sense. And it was a good choice for me, and it's been amazing. But what I've learned is that I didn't want to just be a copywriter. Like, what's come out for me through that is that I love storytelling. And so that comes out in copywriting, which is basically sales writing, but also in creative writing, in relationships, and internally to myself. Like, I've really learned and practiced the power of storytelling and how it can change not just who buys from us and why they buy from us, but how we show up in the world, how I show up in the world. So that's kind of how my business has evolved, and that's my personal, professional story around that. But it's also why I love helping other people practice that power as well, and really learn what my story is, and what are the stories I'm telling myself, and what are the stories I'm telling other people about myself, and maybe where do I need to rewrite them.
What do you think was the biggest block for you to be able to dig deep into your own story?
I think probably, it was a fear of really being seen. And it's interesting because I know all of the work that you do around visibility, and that's just kind of a natural connection between the two of us. But for me, and you know this about me, the first, 3 decades of my life, I had a real fear, and sometimes still do. I don't want to claim that I've already, worked through it and I have no problems being seen now, but a real fear around people really seeing me for who I am. And not because I'm this bad person or anything, but because there was some work that I have had to do around just showing up as myself completely. I had some fear that if I wasn't exactly the person, whether that's a copywriter or friend or whatever role I was playing in my life, if I didn't show up exactly as some other person wanted me to be, well, then there was a fear of, rejection or abandonment or all kinds of things. So I think I had to at least acknowledge that fear and start working with that fear, and having conversations with that fear before I could really start digging into my own story.
When you started doing that and started telling your story more authentically, did you see a different reaction from the people around you?
Oh, absolutely. It was incredible, and it sounds so cliche, but as soon as I was willing to actually open up and be vulnerable and start sharing the parts of myself that, I either felt shame around or guilt around, or, just it made me look really human. In a lot of ways, people reacted to that so much more strongly. I remember the first personal essay that I ever wrote and had published. It was about, finding my dad on Facebook and seeing him for the very first time, literally seeing his picture for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when that was published and I shared it on Facebook, and I mean, I felt so much nervousness around that. Looking back on it now, I don't share that same nervousness around that particular story, but at the time it felt very vulnerable. You know, it was talking about something that I had tried to pretend like wasn't a big deal in my life for a long time, and here I was saying like this was really hard for me. These are the emotions I'm going through. This is what's happening for me in this experience. And I remember sharing it and just getting so many comments from women, especially, just saying like, "I'm so glad you wrote this. Me too. Like I have felt that exact same way. I have gone through those exact same emotions." And it was so interesting that for so long I was hiding different parts of myself and my experience because I wanted to feel more connected to people. But the first time that I actually truly felt connected was when I let people see me and when I let them into a little bit of my experience that I felt some vulnerability around.
I think that's so amazing and such a great tip for all of us, knowing, you know, because as ladypreneurs, especially when we're starting out, we don't necessarily have clarity around exactly what we want to do. And we don't really know how to present ourselves, especially like on our website, to be able to show our authenticity and show that, hey, we're definitely imperfect beings, but here's what I've been through. And this is why I can help you get to that next step because I've been there. Absolutely.
Totally agree.
So let's talk about, as a writer, as a wonderful writer, what is something that you do every day or whenever you're in creative writing mode to get into that right headspace?
Yeah, so the very first thing that I do when I need to get into that creative space is I go for a walk or I just get outside. It's really important to me to get away from this space where I do all the writing. If I just sit down at my desk and my computer right away, there's so much going on in my mind and in my body that like it's kind of blocking me from that creative space that I need. So it's really important for me to literally get out of that space first. So just going for a walk around my block, you know, kind of connecting with nature, just really getting present for myself is really helpful. And then when I come back, I try to empty myself out by just writing down whatever is in my head, like a brain dump, essentially. Julia Cameron calls this morning pages. I do it whenever I need to, not just in the morning, but it really lets me get whatever is going on in my head, all the little thoughts, all the little, you know, oh, I have to make sure I do this before the end of the day, like all those things, just get them out on paper so that they're not existing in my brain. And then once I do that, I'm ready. I'm empty, and I'm ready to be filled up with a different story, a different creative experience, a different writing project, whatever it may be, once I've kind of let myself both internally and externally get clear.
I think that's such a great tip. And just because we're all so different, and I don't think I even know this about you, when you get into that space where you're emptied out and you're ready to be filled, how do the words come to you? Do you see them? Like, do you see a visual picture? Do you just feel like an inner voice? I'm really curious.
I think it varies, definitely depending on what I'm working on, but also just on any given day. I don't tend to see a visual picture. I'll use a client project as an example. So when I'm working on a client project, especially in the very beginning, I kind of just let it flow. It's really important to me not to edit myself as I'm writing, because the editing comes later. Like I have to remember whatever I'm writing in this moment, my client is not going to see it until I'm ready for them to see it. So I need to just let it out, whatever it is. Kind of similar to the brain dump that I did prior to starting. I just start writing. So it's a very weird experience, I think, or maybe it's only weird to me, but I just put my fingers on the keyboard, on you know, my keyboard, and let them go, and try not to stop myself in any way from, you know, whatever it is that wants to come out. And it's really interesting because once I do that, once I'm able to step aside and not self-edit as I'm writing, I'll go back and look at it. You know, I'll give myself some space from it, but I'll go back and read it, and I'm like, wow, this is really, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but this is really good. And I think when my writing is not as good is when I was trying to edit in the moment. When I was trying to tell myself, like, oh, that doesn't make sense, or, oh, that's weird, or, you know, whatever. That's when my writing actually is a little more stunted and just not as deep and powerful.
That's such a great tip because, I know that we're both perfectionists and we're type A's and that kind of stuff. And so I feel like when I write, I'm constantly looking at, well, is it perfect? Okay, well, I've been doing this for 5 minutes. It should be perfect. It so sets us up for failure. So I like just emptying yourself out and then just letting it flow. I think that that's so beautiful and simple, but something that a lot of us don't remember to do.
And it just comes from a deeper place in that moment. I think when you're being critical and editing in the moment, then you're kind of writing from that like ego space, really, instead of writing from a soul place. If you're just letting it come out, that's the stuff that wants to come out. And you can polish it later. You can fix the grammar and take out anything that's not, maybe didn't need to be there. But when you just let it out, that's the stuff you're supposed to be communicating anyway.
Well, and that's the stuff that people want to read.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
That's the stuff people connect to.
So for all of us, the most probably condensed space where we get to talk about ourselves and our story is our About page. So do you have any tips for fellow ladypreneurs to be able to communicate their story a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, I think so. About pages are my absolute favorite. They are just the best part of a website to write, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, because that's where you get to tell your story. So obviously, as a storyteller, I feel very connected to and excited about that particular page. But also because I think as a reader, when I go to other people's websites, that's where I go first. I just want to know about people. I'm so curious, regardless of, whether I'm buying a T-shirt from them or a service or, going to listen to their podcast. Like, I just really want to know their story. So I would say for any ladypreneur who's kind of struggling with that, one, just keep in mind that you don't have to tell your whole life story. Like, that's not the point of the About page. It really is, as with every other page of your website, it really is about the person that you're talking to. It's about your audience, your client, your customer, whoever they may be. So I think it's important, before you even think of your own story, to think of them and think of the stories that they maybe need to hear. So, I know any ladypreneur really knows her ideal client or reader or customer very, very well. We're very familiar with who they are and what they need, their pain points, their desires, all that kind of stuff. So I really want you to think back to that, think about what they need and what they need to hear, and then go back to your life and say, okay, so what stories do I have that they need to hear? What stories do I have from my life that they would read and just like nod their head and feel the relief flood through their body as they think, yes, me too. Because that's what you want. That's how you want to connect with them. You don't just want to word vomit your entire life story onto your About page. Like, your story is important, don't get me wrong, but you want them to connect with the parts of your story that they can relate to, And I think a lot of us do the work we do. I know you do, and I know I do, because we have been in an experience where we needed that work.
Yes.
Everything that you do is because you have been in experiences where you needed to be more visible, where, you needed the connection and community that supports ladypreneurs. And same for me. I do the work that I do because I have struggled so much to tell my story, to really be seen, to find that connection that comes from, sharing. And so I think you want to kind of go back to that. Go back to when you were in your clients' or your readers' or your customers' shoes and tell the stories from your life that got you to where you are now, the stories that you needed to hear back then.
I think that's so important.
What you share on your About page. Yeah.
Because we hear all kinds of stuff about the About page. I know what really threw me for a loop was a training that I did, and they were like, your About page has nothing to do with you. It's all about your ideal client. And so I shaped my first website, my first About page that way. And even though, someone may have looked at that and said, oh, it's amazing, I didn't connect with people. And I can't even tell you probably how many people went to my About page and then just went somewhere else, because even though I talked about my past and my health issues and all of that a little bit, it was so geared towards my client that I felt like it was a turnoff.
Yeah. Well, and I think people see through that, right? Like, I've heard that advice too, and I get it. I get the sentiment behind it, which is that you're there to be of service, and you're there to really give the client what they need to hear. But at the same time, you and I both know this, like, your reader also is really curious about you. Like, they're not coming to your About page to hear even more about, how you can sell to them, really.
Right.
They do want to know about you. I think the key is finding that middle ground of talking about yourself, but being very specific about sharing those stories that the person on the other end needs to hear or wants to hear or read,
Yeah, because it's not, they may be there and they're interested in what you do, but they may not actually want to work with you right away. They may not be in that space, but is your About page powerful enough, and does it have enough story where they're going to want to find you on Instagram or follow your Facebook page and kind of be a part of your tribe, but not necessarily a customer yet?
Absolutely. And let's be honest, like, I'll use myself as an example. There's thousands of other copywriters out in the world, right? And almost all of us can do the same thing. Like, we know the tips and the tricks, and we know how to write good copy. What differentiates me from every other copywriter out there, literally every other copywriter, is me.
Right.
It's my personal experience and my stories and why I do the work that I do and who I want to do that with. So that literally is my only differentiation, is that I'm me and I've had my experience. And so to find my people and to work with my people, I have to tell them what that is. I have to tell them a little bit about me and share some of my story. And if they connect with that, then they're really connecting with me. And if they don't, that's fine. There's another copywriter out there for them.
Absolutely. I remember this one live stream that I did. And you know what? As a visibility expert, you always want to come across presentational and not perfect, but like put together. And so I had my iPad up and it full on like crashed on the floor, and Ollie was running over it, and I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. And I put it back up on the table. I'm like, you guys, I am so sorry. Like, that's so embarrassing. And I got so many comments from women taking the challenge that were like, that was so great. You're just like us. Like, oh my gosh, I'm able to relate to you so much more, all from an iPad falling on the floor. So you never know how just being genuinely you is going to touch people and bring people into your little hen circle.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
So, darling, in terms of tech tips, I'd love to know if you have one special one or maybe two or three different things that you use in your business every day that you love, either online tools or physical tools.
I don't use a ton. I use Asana, but I wouldn't call myself like a power user of that by any means. I don't take full advantage of, all of its capabilities. Really, the one thing that I use every single day is Google Docs, Google Drive. I use Google Docs to write my daily to-do list. I use them to write my clients' copy. I use them to write my grocery list. And what I love about them is just the ability to edit in real time and also have it be collaborative. So with my clients, I can send them their copy through Google Docs, and we can edit and work on it together without, losing anything or editing over each other or anything like that. So it's a very great collaborative tool. And then I also love their spreadsheets. They have great, you can create surveys really easily that I've used and sent to my clients. And the surveys are fantastic because you can create a survey and then it collects all of the responses for you. It creates a Google spreadsheet for you with all of the responses collected in one place.
That's amazing.
That's super great. Yeah, I use it all day, every day for pretty much everything, professionally and personally. I'm a big, big fan of that.
That's a great tip.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Okay, so I want to make sure that people know where to find you. So where can they find you?
So people can find me on my website at jennaarak.com. That's JennaArak.com. And then all of my social media is there on that website, but I'm pretty much Jenna Arak everywhere except Twitter, which is where I'm Jenna Nicole, because I was an early adopter to Twitter. So,
well, hey, it's your middle name. Yeah.
Yes, my middle name.
Yeah, mine's totally different. Mine's Michelle Song because, I used to be a singer. It has nothing to do with what I do now, but I just have not thought, how can I change this to make it a little bit more identifiable? But whatever.
I know. It's fine. We've already built a community there. People
Exactly.
know who we are.
It's like, meh, whatever. So what is the gift that you're going to be giving our audience today when they visit your site?
Oh, so what I have on my website is a guide to building your customer profile or your client profile or your ideal reader profile, whatever that may be. So a little bit earlier when we were talking about your About page and really connecting with who that ideal person is, this guide will kind of lead you step by step through how to create that, how to really get to know them, how to know what stories to pull from your life that will best connect to them. And really, it's helpful in every aspect of your business, whether you're creating content or creating a new service, creating a product or a course, whatever it may be. You can always go back and look at this profile and really know who you're serving and what would be best to serve them with.
That's wonderful. That's so valuable. Thank you so much for giving that to our listeners today. You can claim that by going to jennaarak.com. And before I forget, my dear, I want to wish you a happy anniversary.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know, Jenna and I got married exactly 1 month apart. So it's so funny. We're so in sync most of the time. And stay tuned because I'm sure we're going to be collaborating on even more together in the future. But in the meantime, I hope that you have learned a little bit more about storytelling today. And I hope that you connect with Jenna. She's a wonderful person to know and such a supportive, amazing woman. So Jenna, thank you so much. I value our friendship incredibly. And I cannot wait to probably see you next week, my dear.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so glad to be here, and I love and appreciate our friendship as well.
Yay! So everyone, we are going to see you next week for another episode of Ladypreneur Legacy. Stay tuned and have a good one.
Thanks for listening in today to the Visibility Vixen podcast. Subscribe now and share with a fellow Vixen who wants to start building their visibility. For more fire in your life and brand, visit visibilityvixen.com.